Alrighty. It says it's streaming, but I don't see anything. But that doesn't mean anything, because we know the power of the internets. So what I'm going to do is open another browser, put it on a separate window here. Basically, I don't know if you looked at my channel before we go on live, but I do tabletop RPG reviews and stuff and all that fun stuff. And you have actually been I'm a huge fan of yours. I've run a Mutants and Masterminds game for years, and I've used a lot of your art. I don't know if you consider that stealing or not. Hopefully not, because I don't publish it or anything. I use it for my game.
I do not consider that stealing. I'm very happy when people do that. If people take my art and then start making money off of it, then I consider it stealing.
Yeah, this is only for my...
If it's just private use and it's like, hey, the character looks like this, and they hold up a page, I have no problem with that. That's why I post a lot of artwork, because I'm a gamer too.
Yeah. All right. Let me make sure the audio is working. Test 1 2 3. Let's see here.
Private use and it's like.
Yep, we're recording.
I hear my awful voice.
Yeah. Okay. It's not only me. I think the same thing. So hopefully it's not capturing our video, so it'll just be audio. I don't know why it's being so wonky, but the audio is good. We'll put it up. Nobody wants to see my ugly mug anyway.
You and me both.
So let me do my intro. Since we're recording right now, it's kind of moot. But hey, everybody, it is Mr. Mean coming at you live this Tuesday night from kind of rainy Duluth, Minnesota. On the line here with me, I have the wonderful, the awesome, the enigmatic, if I can say it that way, Mr. Storn Cook, an artist of some renown. Mr. Storn, say hi.
Hello, everybody.
For those that don't know, I've been a huge Mutant and Masterminds fan. I've done a review on my channel, and I have been following Mr. Storn's art career for years. And it's so funny because I saw you were on MeWe, and I'm on MeWe, of course. I got off of the toxicity that we call Facebook, and I saw that you replied to something that I was looking at as well. And so I was like, hey, any chance I could get you on the show? And you were like, sure, send me an email. I was like, what? I mean, I was literally starstruck. So, take it with a grain of salt. Don't let your head get too big. It is called the Mr. Mean Show for a reason. But you...
So you're going to be mean to me at some point.
I'm mean to everybody. I mean, I'm mean to my own kid.
I just want to...
He's only 2. I'm going to have a tough kid, let me tell you.
as my mom said, why have children unless you can put them to work or make fun of them? So that was what I grew up with.
I love your mom. I don't even know her, and I love her. And she's an artist as well, correct?
Yes, she is.
Yeah, is she still working?
Oh yeah, she just released her illustrated autobiography, which is like 96 short stories, all illustrated by her, and it's called The Whore Next Door, which is a very provocative title.
My gosh.
And if you ever want to learn way more than you ever want to know about me, you read that book.
I'm gonna go check it out. Well,
it's on Amazon. I don't have a link, but I could find one if you.
Well, The Whore Next Door. That's an easy title to remember. Yeah. Well, I'll try to put a link down in the show notes. I'll make a note of it right now.
I'm sure she would appreciate that.
This is such a small industry that anything anybody can do to help anybody else is always an awesome thing, and I am very much a believer in pay it forward. I think with all the negativity and the hate that we have in this world, and with the internet in and of itself, anything that breeds positivity is a good thing. I can't believe the name though. The Whore Next Door, correct?
Yep. So I had a mentor named Brent Noseworthy when I was a young art pup in New York City, and he actually did some work for SPI and stuff like that, and wrote a couple of Napoleonic history books, and that's sort of, he was using some of my art and working with me, and he once told me, always give credit, because giving credit is free and you never know how it's going to pay off. And I always thought that was really good advice.
Yeah, I hate to say this, but as corny as it sounds, and my wife, it's one of the things that my wife really likes about me is, like, when we go to a restaurant or a public place and we get really good service, customer service is king, as the old saying goes, but a lot of people forget it, especially young people. And so I'll make an effort to go to the manager or, whoever's in charge and say, hey, Storn was my artist, and he just took really good care of me, and because it's so easy to talk about the negative, and a lot of people don't talk about the positive. So I like to try and pay it forward, and then conversely, on the flip side, if I have bad service, I typically don't say anything. I just won't go back to that person again, if at all possible. So I like to be positive in that way. But enough of all this namby-pamby stuff. How did you get started? I know how you got started because I read your blog, but for the listeners out there, how did you get started in art?
Well, like we said, my mom was an artist, so there was always art supplies lying around. I grew up in the countryside of the Finger Lakes, Mecklenburg, New York, for those who are keeping track, which is a town of about 400 people, and it was boring. And the art supplies were there, but it was at 15 that I was playing a Laserdisc video game called Cliffhanger. It's very obscure.
I know it.
You know it.
Oh yeah.
You know it. Okay, so it was. I found out later, much later in life, that it was Lupin the Third. Movie that was spliced together, and so which was created by, or that version of that movie was done by Hayao Miyazaki, who's famous for Studio Ghibli. And so after I played that video game for an afternoon, I came home and I decided that I wanted to draw a comic because the fight scene in the clock tower just blew my mind.
Yeah.
And
it's a great game.
Yeah, it's a great game. And the second page of the comic, it was like Epiphany, angels sing in my little room above the kitchen. And I was like, I want to be an illustrator.
Wow.
And I had my mom as a great example because she is a fine artist. She does illustration too, but her domain has usually been fine art, and I knew I didn't want to be a fine artist. I knew I wanted to tell stories and be an illustrator. So I had this wonderful example to show me and help guide me along the way. So I went to New York City at 17, went to NYU to find my way into comics. I banged my head against DC and Marvel for several years. I ended up moving out of New York City and eventually ended up in Columbus, Ohio, where I went to CCAD. But at that time, I had sent a portfolio to Iron Crown Enterprises, which was my first portfolio sent to a role-playing game company.
Merp.
And they got it in one day. And Terry Amthor hired me that day. And
wow.
And he said I never opened up submissions until the end of the month, but for some reason I opened up yours, and he was writing a book called Eidolon City in the Sky, which was for the Rollmaster line. And I had happened to do an elven captain on a ship with but when you looked in the background, the ship was above the mountains and there was clouds, and it was obviously this sort of sailing sky ship, right? And he said that's perfect for Eidolon. So it was just complete serendipity, and that was how I got my start. So I freelanced my way through art school.
Nice.
And yeah, so I was taking art assignments and ganging them up with my homework, which my professors were extremely supportive of, and CCAD was an incredible experience. It really taught me how to be a professional.
Oh, that's awesome.
And yeah. And by the way, I mean, for those people who follow the art scene in role-playing games, some of my classmates were Jeff Carlisle, Steve Prescott, Joe Caroni. I'm sure Seamus was behind. Chris Seamus was behind us. Chris Seaman was a year behind me. So all these guys went on to incredible role-playing game careers.
Yeah, that's
illustrating careers. Yep.
Yeah, and a lot of people may not know this, but you're a big gamer yourself.
Yep, I've been gaming. Well, gosh, I've been gaming since 1975 or 74 is when I started with a little-known game called Tactics 2, which is going way back.
Way back.
I guess D&D was around, but I didn't know of it. My friend and I discovered D&D, the little pamphlets in the white box, through the Squadron catalog,
Yeah.
and we sent away for it. So while we were waiting the 6 months that it took to arrive, we played Skirmish Wargaming, which was a little book, and sort of did fantasy adventures with that, and had weird rules like toy blocks knocked down would be a trap, and
Yeah.
yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been gaming a really, really long time.
Yeah. Well, I'm in the same boat. I turned 52 this summer.
You and I are the same age.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I'm 53. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm a June baby, and I grew up in Brooklyn, so quite a bigger town than where you're from. But
Yes.
there was a lot of problems back then in the 60s and 70s.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
there was a lot of racism, and it was if you were in the wrong neighborhood at the wrong hour, you may not make it out alive. And I ran with the wrong crowd. And I remember the days of like the Italian guys, walking into the laundromat where not a stick of laundry got done, if you know what I mean. And my dad was a New York City beat cop in the Greenwich Village. And he was German straight off the boat. He came over to America when he was 4 years old. And so he wouldn't go on a take and anything like that. So it was an interesting childhood, to say the least, of what I remember. It was a very sordid time. But I do remember getting in a lot of fights and a lot of trouble. And my mom came home with this Ziploc bag of D&D and these little pamphlets with chits. There weren't even dice. Polyhedral dice did not exist, except for six-siders. And she sat down on the floor with me. It's one of the fondest memories I have. My mother's gone now, and it is probably one of the most cherished memories I have of her cutting out the chits with me and putting them in a cup and helping me make my first character. So
That's cool.
yeah, it's pretty neat.
That's a really great story.
It's an awesome memory, and it's one I cherish. And I have a 30-year-old with a 7-year-old grandson, and I have a 20-year-old son and a 2-year-old. Should have bought cable. But I'm hoping the 20-year-old has no interest in games whatsoever, unless it's a video game, which is a shame. But my 2-year-old, hopefully he'll start rolling dice here with me pretty soon. But I've never forced it on any of my kids. If they want to do it, great. If they don't, I mean, when my 20-year-old was in his teens, his early teens, he wanted to do it because that's what Daddy was doing.
Sure.
But other than that, he grew out of it, and now he's off in business school, and he's working restaurants and wants to be a chef. And hey, I hope he does well. But so for you, gaming started like me at a very early age. Do you feel that that's what kind of, aside from Miyazaki, which that's an epiphany right there, and your mom being an artist, was it just a natural progression to just roll right into art? I mean, did you find it hard at all?
No.
Like other kids were playing football. You grew up in New York where sports are a big thing.
Yeah, I mean, I my athletic endeavors was I've been playing tennis since I was 8 years old, but I played with my grandfather and my uncle, and it was sort of pick me up tennis, and I lived too far away from the junior high school or the high school to have much of an athletic career because my mom was a single mom at the time, and there was cows to be fed and watered, and
there was work to do.
There was work to do, and there was no after school bus that would get me back home. So I couldn't do a lot of the activities that I think I might have done. But back to the gaming, I mean, from the get-go, my friend and I were drawing our characters, like immediately. And I remember doing a scene, a very elaborate scene that was based on one of our games, and my high school art teacher looked at it and said, everything is mirroring each other. It's really static. You should think about having one object bigger than the other and sort of contrast and not have, like, I had the poses literally mirroring each other, and I was like, wow, you're right. And actually I really pride myself on my ability to have sort of dynamic storytelling in how I set up a page. Because of that lesson, I probably got that at, I was probably 9 or 10 when she told me that. Or yeah,
Wow.
that was junior high school.
Well, that's funny because I was in junior high school and I was in art class, and I don't remember the art teacher's name. She was a Milano lady. It was in New York, and I remember her telling me we were taking our art test, and she had put out on the table. She had put out some vases and a bowl of fruit, and the way our classroom set, the light would shine. A beam of light would hit that center table always. So she would put things on there, and our final test was to draw what was on the table. There was a kid next to me, and we were kind of friends, and I don't even remember his name. That's been a long time ago. But I remember he was drawing, and I leaned over and I said, "You need to draw the reflections of the light." Because, I had done it on mine. And teacher would walk by. She was checking everybody. And she's like, "Oh, John, it looks really good." And I was like, "Thank you." And I was drawing the Incredible Hulk. That was my thing. That was my jam, was the Incredible Hulk. So anything I can draw the Incredible Hulk one, I did. But I also like drawing, still life. Those things like vases and the sun hitting it. And, this is high school, junior high school art. They're not giving you anatomy classes or anything. They're just, it's an elective class. And she heard me tell him that, and so I got an F on my final exam, and I never wanted to draw after that. And I still have, somewhere around here, I have my art book where I've got this wizard. It was the old TSR wizard. He's standing like this, and there's lightning shooting through his hands. He's got the robes with a conical hat. I drew that, and
That's awesome.
I don't know what they call it, but I had the ability to look at something and draw it, verbatim, or not verbatim, but exactly. Drawing anatomy out of my head, I could never get. It just never looked right, especially hands. Rob Liefeld has the same problem.
I had some luck there too. Very early, I think it was about 15. I don't remember if I bought it or my mother bought it, but she got, somehow I ended up with a copy of Bern Hogarth's Dynamic Anatomy, which I don't know if you know about Bern Hogarth, but he taught in the 30s and 40s at School of Visual Arts, and he was also did Tarzan for the Sunday Funnies. So he was very much about anatomy. Yeah. So a couple of his students were guys like Frank Frazetta, Wally Wood, and Will Eisner. Just minor characters in the history of American illustration.
Yeah, nobody important. Never hear of those
Nobody
guys.
Important at all. And by that audience, I mean the exact opposite.
Yeah, exactly. We're being facetious.
Yeah. Yes, being extremely sarcastic. So that was a great, I mean, his stuff is really dated. It looks like the 40s, but the information was really, really strong on how you do anatomy out of your head and how you do anatomy in perspective, especially. And sort of like he took a little bit of George Bridgman's work, which also did an anatomy book. But I'm probably getting very esoteric on our audience.
No, man, it's super cool. I mean, when you sit there, and I mean, I'm sure you have actors or musicians that you idolize, right? We all idolize somebody, right? And thinking back to those years when I was, drawing prolifically, and filling up my notebooks, and my mom yelling at me, and the teacher calling my mom and saying, he's drawing in his notebook, he's not doing his lessons, and I was like, but I know the lesson, and then I'd whip it out real quick, and it would be right, of course, and the teacher had nothing to say. And my mom, who at the time as well was a single mom, was like, look, I ain't got time to keep running down here. I'm working 2 jobs, double shifts. You either pass him or you fail him. The choice is yours, but obviously he knows what he's doing. And so I was a problem child, to say the least. I give my mom utmost props, because I don't know how she put up with my ass, to be honest. I would have drowned me at birth, I'm telling you. But she did it, and she always, never once did I get scolded for drawing in my notebooks. It was always, do I need to get you another notebook? And she would just go get me another notebook. And I kind of have fallen away from the art side of it, but I replaced it with storytelling. That's my creative outlet. So I hate published adventures. I like to spin my own yarn. Now, back to you, are you a player or are you the GM? Typically.
Good question. Before we get into that, I do want to go back to something you say. Is that okay?
Sure.
Something you said, which was, I'm sorry, that teacher should have been hogtied,
Oh,
because
yeah.
what she told you was, first of all, you were helping out your friend. Two, you were right. Three, why is she squashing your creativity?
Yeah.
I mean, just that is a travesty. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm really sorry that happened to you, and I
Yeah.
think,
It is what it is, brother. You know what? And
yeah.
it makes us who we are. I went off to be in law enforcement. I served my country. I was in Iraq, and I doodled in my soldier's manual. Because it was paper and we didn't have a lot of stuff to draw with. So
There's not a piece of paper that sits in front of me, and if there's a pencil or a pen in my hand, that survives contact. So
exactly, and
yeah, you know.
I doodle on everything. Just even if it's just geometric shapes, drawing boxes and coloring up different sides in and stuff. So believe me when I say that yours is a rare talent, and it's I mean, brings me joy whenever I see you post something new.
Oh, thank you.
Oh yeah, and that's
Very
no
much.
joke, man. I was so humbled when you said, I mean, because you were so matter of fact. You're like, yeah, sure, send me an email. I get home from work about, da da da. And I was like, I went and ran. I'm not lying. I went and ran. And I told my wife, I was like, honey, Storm Cook said he'll be on my show. And my wife's like, that's nice, dear. Feed the kid.
Yeah, who is he?
Yeah,
And
who the
why
hell
would
is
I
this
care?
cook guy? Cook? Is he going to come here and cook? He better. No, but
No, I just did that for my wife. So yeah, she had a rough day. But you asked me the question of am I the GM or if I'm the player, and the answer to that is kind of yes. And it's a little complicated in that I was part and still am a part of a Champions game that's been going on
Wow.
for 30 years. So, which is called the Red Dragon Universe, and it's run by a friend of mine named Neil Carver. And when we lived close enough for this to happen, I did GM in that setting occasionally. Like he was the primary GM, and I was sort of the secondary GM. But when it came to my other groups, and I have GM'd a lot of fantasy, and that is my first love. And it's odd that in art it's my first love as well, even though I'm probably better known for my superheroes.
Yeah.
I love doing superheroes, don't get me wrong.
That's how I found you. When Mutants and Masterminds first came out, I was telling this big old yarn for my friends years ago, and Green Ronin had paid. It was really super cool. Chris Pramis and Nicole, wonderful, beautiful human beings, had paid for me to go to Gen Con. And this is, I want to say 92, 94, somewhere right around in there. Maybe 96,
Okay.
but I think it was a little earlier. But they paid for me to go to Gen Con, and I ran Mutants and Masterminds, and I ran their 3.5 Book of the Righteous, 3.0 Book of the Righteous. I ran a D&D campaign or scenarios at the convention for them, and I helped man the booth, and they were just wonderful, awesome people. But they had this new game called Mutants and Masterminds, and I said, yeah, I can run anything with my eyes closed. I've been doing it for years. And I read it, and then I started looking at the art, and I said, wow, I got to make some heroes. And this is back in the days of Excel spreadsheets and everything. So, because Mutants and Masterminds needs it. And I started looking for art, and I found you, and I was like, wow, this guy's amazing. I really dig it. And then I was real big into Legends of the Five Rings, and I saw that you were doing a lot of like commission for L5R. And you did a commission of a dragon Shugenja for somebody. It was a female, and it was amazing. And I actually had that as my wallpaper on my computer for a long time.
I'm getting to the age now where I'm blanking. I used to remember everything I did art-wise and for who I did it for. And I don't know, about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, it's slipping. And then it's like I see it and I go, oh, yeah, I did that.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
I
don't remember.
Do you ever have that moment of like you see a piece of art and you go, wow, that's really cool. And then you realize, oh, I drew that.
No.
Okay, so you're okay then. You no Alzheimer's setting in.
Yeah.
You're not gone crazy yet. Because you are an artist. I mean, artists go crazy.
And then I go, oh God, look at all the mistakes. Oh, I have a funny relationship with my art. Anything that I've done within the last 2 weeks, I think is pretty good. Anything that I have done from the last 10 years absolutely sucks.
Right.
And then anything that's 10 years and older, I go, oh, look how quaint. Look where I was going. And I sort of forgive myself
Right.
and go, I see where the journey is going and how it's happening and stuff like that. But yeah, I pretty much hate everything I do.
Yeah, but you know, as
weeks.
I don't know who said it, but they said, you know, if you're not learning every day, you might as well die, or something to that effect.
I agree with that.
You know, if you're looking at your previous art and you're going, oh, I should have done this, that just means you've learned. You know, and we are our own worst critics. I mean,
oh yeah,
I hate the sound of my voice, but everyone's like, oh, you have a nice deep voice and it sounds good on the radio or on the podcast or on YouTube, and I'm like, yeah, but look at this mug. I mean, I don't even understand why my wife loves me, but I know why I can reach stuff on the top shelf. My wife's short and I'm 6 foot, so go figure. And I've got monkey arms. I mean, I have those arms, but. Yeah, we are our own worst critics. You did, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you also do a lot of Magic cards?
No, so.
Is that commission work that you did?
I did a lot of L5R card art.
Card art, that's what it was, L5R, not Magic.
And I did a smattering of the role playing side of things, but that was mostly back in the day when they were doing black and white.
Right.
And then couple of my card art got into the role-playing game because they own the rights. Right. This was back when it was Elrec, and not F. Yeah, right.
Yeah, so not Fantasy Flight.
Yeah, so when Fantasy Flight took over, unfortunately, they just pay so little. I bowed out of doing any L5R. But I have played in L5R, and I have a good friend, Bob, who's run a very long-running L5R campaign that I've had the joy of being part of. And so it is a setting that I have some emotional investment.
I was going to say, because your art is amazing. I mean, I really like all of your art for L5R. Your superheroes get me, though. I mean, I've been a comic collector. I'm not anymore just because I don't have the financial means, and comic books are too damn expensive now. But,
I agree with you.
But
I buy graphic novels every once in a while.
Right.
Like yeah.
I'll wait till they make it into a movie and then I'll get it. It's
exactly
because that's the step we're going in. But sadly, and you do now. Let's plug your commission side because you do a lot of. They can go to what, storncook.com?
Nope, stornart.com.
Stornart.com. I'm also really dumb, so don't.
No,
don't take any offense.
Yeah, I would say so. So my situation as an artist was, I was illustrating into my 40s, probably around 46, 47. I ended up getting married again, and I just wasn't making enough money at it, and really banging my head against how do I do those Magic cards? How do I get to that top tier? How do I do the Bane book covers or something like that, and it just wasn't there for me. I just didn't have the chops. I didn't have the connections. I wasn't learning how to do that, and I was very frustrated. And a job fell into my lap where I am a marketing and advertising guy for a small energy company in upstate New York. So I do a 9 to 5. I do, and it's wonderful. And I work with a wonderful family who runs it, and they're great. And I really enjoyed an office job for the first time in my life. I also get to drive a forklift and a Moffat and throw pellets around and plug coal, and so I get to do physical things too, which I quite enjoy.
Keeps us young.
Yep, but I can't stop drawing, and commissions were already. It was really interesting when I started doing commissions online, because I remember the first year, I think I did 4 or 5 for the entire year. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. I did 4 or 5. I was like really excited. I mean, I was freelancing at the time for publishers, so I had plenty of work. It wasn't like I've only been out of work one day, and that was right before Gen Con. And then I went to Gen Con and ran into Steve Kenson and he said, oh, I got some Mutants and Masterminds artwork for you. So that was my one day of not having work.
And you got to go to Gen Con for it.
And I went to Gen Con and I had a table and I immediately had work. So
there you go.
And I left Gen Con.
And Steve's a super nice guy.
He is. I really enjoy.
Well,
Steve,
I mean, Mutants and Masterminds is his brainchild. So.
Oh, I know.
And the concept, the publishing is Green Ronin, but I mean, it's his baby. And man, does he loves
and
it.
Hal, I gotta give a shout out to Hal, who's
Hal
the art
is
director.
Mango is super nice. They
he's
Stan
been a
Stan
wonderful
is
joy to
super
join.
awesome too. He's done a lot of freelance work with the Green Running guys. But
they're a joy to work for.
All of
I've
them. Nicole is wonderful. I really can't say enough nice things about him. I fell out of touch with him, and I had one of those stupid, old guy moments. I went up to George Valikos from Eden Studios because him and Chris Pramis could be brothers. The only difference is Chris doesn't have as much of a beard as George does. And so I'm at a local convention and I'm talking to George thinking he's Chris. Because for some reason I just thought he was Chris. And I went and bless his soul, he's being so polite and he's like, yeah, I'm George. I do All Flesh Must Be Eaten. You helped work on that, don't you remember? And I was like, oh yeah, great moment there. I'm sorry, I apologize. And man, I walked away and his wife came up and his wife is super nice and she heard the whole thing and I'm beat red, and I'm just like, I feel like a giant idiot. And she was like, oh, don't worry about it. It's no big deal. He gets that all the time. And I'm like, no, he doesn't. And it was so funny. And luckily I haven't run into Chris at a convention in a few years. So, but I think to set the record
straight. But when
straight,
you do, you have to
I have to refer
George.
to him as George. George, I love All Flesh Must Be Eaten. It's a great game. Because I did some work on Buffy and Altered Primate, which was their
I did some artwork for Altered Primate.
Yep. And that's the other book I was.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that. Hey, I remembered something.
Yeah. I remembered something. Yay! So it's funny what a small world it is, right? It's neat though that and I just like
I've won more. Oh, go ahead.
No, go. You won more.
So I have a quick story about that. I had moved to a small place called Jacksonville, which is outside of Trumansburg, New York, and it was this sort of apartment complex. And the landlord said, "Oh, my son does some artwork like you," and I was okay, blah blah blah, And then I meet his son. His name's Pete, and Pete's like, your name sounds really familiar. And I'm like, yeah, well, maybe you know me from. He says, yeah, I've done some gaming, and so Pete had done some gaming. He comes by the next day, and Pete lived in the same little neighborhood, so it's like 3 doors down. Pete is. He comes over with a Babylon 5 book done by Mongoose, and he says, you and I are in the same book, and he had done art for it, and I had done art for it, and we lived 3 doors apart, and now he's one of my best friends. So that's awesome. Yeah.
It is a small world, and we have to. I think we have to self-promote, and we have to spread the love, so to speak. It's a hobby that it's beyond tertiary for income. This is a nice to have. So
right.
Someone that can pay you $60 for a commission or whatever it may cost. That's money that they could be putting on their table for food.
I'm so much higher than that. I'm actually $75.
$75, right? And you don't even say thank you, right? You just give me your damn money.
I try to be very nice online. I hope people. It must work because I get.
I will tell you that in some of the forums that I peruse, I've talked to some people that have gotten commission work done from you, and they are beyond ecstatic and said that you were a pleasure to deal with. So, for what it's worth.
Well, thank you. I feel like my job is to take people's ideas and give them visual life. And it's one of the joys that I have in illustration is that collaboration between a writer or an editor or a patron. Yeah. And I love the person who comes to me with 3 pages and the character's history, and they give me the equipment sheet and everything. I also like the person who comes to me with 2 sentences and says, and fill in the rest, they're both valid, and they're both really interesting from a commission's point of view to work on. That's all I have to say on that.
Well, I think there is no wrong way, because you're collaborating with that person to make something that means something to them. And I think the joy is that you get to bring whatever that it is to life, 2-dimensionally, on a piece of paper or on their computer screen or whatever. You bring that to life for them. So you give them validation and meaning, and wow, he knew exactly what the things I've heard is, I told him what I wanted and he gave me exactly what I wanted, and they were super happy. And that's a great feeling.
Yeah, I like it when they say, "Wow, you exceeded my expectations."
Exactly, and
that's a really nice feeling. And I have had very few rechecks. I've had a few, but somehow I have a knack for getting to what people want in their characters and how they should be depicted, and what the body language is, what the accoutrement is, what is the clothes that they wear, or outfit if it's a superhero or a supervillain. All of that is really important. In a commission, everything becomes sort of magnified, and I think more important than if you're doing a generic like interior battle scene for role-playing game of the month X. Because those characters are just something that the art director's thrown at you, and it's like, you have your generic dwarf, you have your generic elf, you have your wizard, and you have your human fighter, and when people come to you with their characters, there's usually some wrinkle, there's some idiosyncrasy about them that makes it really fun for me to bang one out in 2 to 4 hours.
Is that literally all it takes you?
Yeah,
on average. Wow,
most of the time, yeah.
Really? And now, of course, you collaborate with the customer, and then so that you send them a proof, and they say, "Okay, I like this," but no, really, it goes that easy.
Because I charge, I think, a very reasonable price, and I started at $45 way back in the Stone Age. I was like, listen, I'm going to be very upfront about this. Commissions are my playtime. And publishers, they have all these demands, and when I did Star Wars for West End Games, every single illustration had to go past Skywalker and Lucasfilms and get it all. It's a hassle, and it's an important hassle. I don't begrudge it, but I wanted to keep commissions very much my play and very much
not make it
spontaneous, not make it work. And so I don't do. Unless they're willing to pay a lot of money for it, I don't do like, here's the prelim.
Yeah.
And because if I'm going to pat myself on the back anywhere, here's where I'm going to do it, which is I'm really good at capturing those characters' essence, or at least getting close enough that the customer's like, oh yeah, that works. That works in a way that I didn't expect. And they'll buy it, and I don't have to deal with, his sword's too short, or his sword's too long, or I didn't see him looking like, the way you drew him. I saw him more looking like Chris Evans. It's like, I don't have to deal with that. I can just...
Well, you set the expectation up front.
And I noticed that when I was drawing for my own group, and I tended to draw all the characters for the superhero game I was in, or at least a lot of them, I do have a poster of 30 years of RDU, which is all player characters. There's not a single villain on it. I'll send you a link to it at some point.
Please, that would be awesome.
I noticed that I could influence the way players played their characters by putting an image in front of them.
Yeah.
I remember this one guy, James, came up with this character named Chongo, who was sort of like this Jamaican.
I have that picture. Yeah.
And he was such a joke character, and didn't have any gravitas. And so I drew him, and I was like, I'm going to make this character interesting.
He's a badass. Character. I mean.
And he's a badass, and also it's like, that's the closest I ever got to Alan Davis. like that was the most Alan Davis drawing I ever did.
I still have that because you put it up on your page, or someone put it in one of the forums, because Green Ronin had their Mutants and Masterminds forum, and it had all the art, and then on the Champion side, there was an art forum, and you have a ton of your art in there. I'm sure you know that. where people asked you for commissions. I mean, I don't know if you can
I
see.
haven't been back there for a long time. I've been in Facebook a lot, and I have not been. I gotta resurrect those threads if people are still interested in that.
They're
I don't know if
still
there's interest.
alive, as far as I know. I mean, I haven't looked at them in quite a while myself, but I know as of last year they were still going. But the bookshelf behind me, it's hard to tell perspective with the camera there, but that is an 8 feet tall, 5 feet wide bookshelf. And one
I see a couple of games.
Yeah, just one or two.
Yeah, I see the Blue Champions book there.
Yeah.
Stop a bullet.
Yep. Yeah. Literally, this is my home defense. In case someone breaks into the house. But I don't have my reading glasses on. But yeah, there's. Do you have anything in the 6th edition? Did they revise any of your art? Oh yeah, you do. I just saw a piece.
I think so. Yeah. I think I did some, and I think I did some updated stuff.
Yeah.
I think I was kind of struggling with digital coloring at that time. I'm not particularly happy.
Yeah, because this piece is total shit. I mean, it's horrible. Why would you even? I don't even know if this is you, but it kind of looks like your style.
That's not me.
That's not you?
No. Nope.
I know you've got some in here though. You normally.
I think I did some full pages in there.
Yeah, I mean, this is... I bought this book. I've never played it. I played original Champions back in the day.
It's interesting.
It's too much math for me. I'm old. I don't like working that hard.
I'm just gonna move my wire here. That's driving me crazy. Excuse me, audience.
It's a short drive.
Can't see anyways.
Okay.
I loved 4th edition. I loved.
It's a beautiful book. Don't get me. I haven't cracked this book open since probably the day I bought it. I was looking for a full page piece of art. Of course, the simple thing would be just to go to the page here and see if they give you credit.
They might not have been using me at that
point.
Yeah,
you're in here.
I can't.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm.
Brett Barkley, Christopher Burdett, Storn Cook, Anthony Cormier, Andrew. The list goes on, but your third one. I've seen some art that looks like yours, but like I said, I haven't cracked it. First time I've broken this book open since I bought it back in who knows when this came out. I mean, it's forever. This was the one though that I got a kick out of because I didn't realize
that was a fun job. I think we should talk about that.
Yeah, John was. You want to talk about a guy? I'm in IT. I do desktop support. I type fairly fast. And John, like I said, needed a place to live. So he moved in. I was going through a divorce and I had the house. And so I needed help with the rent. And so he said, yeah, I got a job. I can help pay, $550 a month. Boom. Plus utilities. We'll cover it. I said, cool. No problem. So I'm sitting there and I work, 7 to 4:30 kind of deal. And I got to go get my kid from daycare and everything. And my ex-wife's being a total jerk, but as it goes. And I remember laying there at like 10:30 at night, which is about the time I usually lay my head down. And all I hear is clack, 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 clack. and I'm like, oh, okay, well, he'll stop in a little bit. And I remember it was 1:30 in the morning. Clack, 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 clack. So the next morning, we were getting up, we were making coffee, and I looked at him and I said, John, you're a wonderful human being. I like you a lot. I'm going to be home at 4:30-ish, 5 o'clock. There better be an empty box for a quiet type keyboard on this counter. Because if I come home and there's not, I'm going to shove that keyboard up your ass. And he was like, okay. And that's all I said. And I walked out. I went to work. Funny enough, I get home. I picked up my son from daycare. I get home, and right there, center on the counter, is a Microsoft Quiet Touch keyboard, empty box. And in his room is the keyboard set up, because we left our doors open, because we were trying to sell the house, so we didn't know when people were going to come in and, want to review it. But it was just so funny because the guy can spit out some words, man. It's just amazing. And his mind just thinks, so, it's so weird how game design and, the things that he comes up with. L5R is pretty much most of his brainchild. Legends of the Five Rings, him and his ex-wife. And then, of course...
And Houses of Blood is damn good game.
It's
I
much
actually
fun.
played it.
I mean, and it's I mean, I gotta it's signed. I don't know if you can see it.
There you go.
Yeah, it's signed.
Well, if we ever meet face to face, I'll sign it too.
Yeah, there. Hey, and I'll sign your copy. How's that?
Sure.
Mr. Mean. No, it was.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about that assignment was John came to me and said, "Listen, I want to represent the culture." And I'm blanking on their name. The Vor, the Vol.
The vote. Oh gosh. Now you're gonna make me think here, man.
This antediluvian, fancy pants. And it was funny because we were play testing it. Judd Carlman and Jeff Lauer, who were part of.
Yeah. He's got a lot of people
podcast.
in here, man. I feel very honored.
They were the Sons of Cryos podcast. I don't know if you ever listened to that back in the day. So I came in at the tail end of that and was a podcaster for a while. But John came to me, and said, Ven. I don't ever want to show the Ven, like, here's a character shot of the Ven. How can we show the Ven culture by not showing them? And so I came up with the dueling archaeologist notes, and he liked that. And so he let me just riff on that stuff.
Yeah. He is.
That's the only time I've ever written anything for a role-playing game, I think, that got published.
That's awesome.
So the dueling, and I just took all the art theory that had been crammed in my head and turned it to 11 and got really snarky with it. And, like, basically one archaeologist calling the other one, a fucktard. And and then I had these sort of very primitive hieroglyphic drawings and stuff like that. Yeah, and a lot of broken statues.
Yeah,
and,
I mean, there's not a whole lot of art in here. It is.
No, there isn't.
This is a meaty text volume. It's a lot of reading, but it's a good game for those. Most people will listen to this after we post it, but this is definitely one to pick up. It's a very different. It is your anti D&D game, as he says in his foreword.
Words matter. Words are weapons.
Words are weapons.
And culture is weapon, and I think every single one of those originals, they're all pencil drawings sold, because I sell my originals at gaming conventions and comic book conventions occasionally when I get out of the house and want to do those things. Because I'm a curmudgeon and want to stay at home pretty much.
Well, I mean,
because I play those video games too.
Oh, I do too. I'm so excited for Borderlands 3. It's not even funny. I'm a huge Borderlands fan, so
I've been playing Escape from Tarkov lately.
I've heard of it. I haven't played it. I've been playing Hand of Fate 2.
Oh, interesting one.
Yeah,
I've seen that game.
There's a board game. They did there's a game design company in Australia. Last weekend I was at Ostacon, which is in Austin, Minnesota, and it's a small community. There's only 303 people there.
So wait a minute. I got to back you up, because we had a little bit of correspondence where we talked about our football allegiance. How did a boy from Brooklyn become a Saints fan in Minnesota?
My mother had a cruel sense of humor. My mother is from she's passed, so is my father. My mom was from Waco, Texas, and her mom, my grandmother, who is Native American of the Osage tribe, was living on the reservation in Oklahoma and had married a truck driver, white guy. And he had moved my grandmother to New Orleans, Louisiana. And there so I was, my mom had met my dad, who was an Army guy at the time, and they had relocated to New York, and my dad had ETS'd out of the Army after the Vietnam War, Korean War, and he's old. And he set down roots in Brooklyn and became a beat cop for New York, City Police. And we would go back to Louisiana. My mom there were 7 of us, and she would ship us all off to Louisiana in the summertime. We had first started going to the reservation in Oklahoma, and we would spend time there, and I'd get in a lot of fights because, well, you could see I pretty much look like a white guy. I am red, and I tan really well, but Neither here nor there. And so we would spend time on the reservation, and then for whatever reason, it got cheaper to send us to New Orleans. I guess because my grandmother was there, and so my uncles would take her sons, my mom's brothers, would take me to the Saints games, and we'd put the paper bags on our head, back in the 70s and the 80s and stuff, and have fun with it. And I've been a diehard Saints fan since as far as I know, as long as I remember. And I'm a gamer. I will chuck dice with the best of them. I think I've got some pretty decent nerd cred up on the wall there. I pride myself on my channel for doing reviews of little-known esoteric games, or old games that a lot of people don't have or play anymore. And but man, on football Sunday, I'm in front of the TV, and there's no talking, there's no, and I am allowed to yell and scream at the TV. When my son, my son's only 2, he's 2 years and 3 months now. When he was like 8 months, right when football season hit, right after he was born. He's born in January, so during the this kid can sleep through a hurricane, because I'd be sitting there yelling and screaming at the TV and he wouldn't wake up. So and then he got a little bit older. I don't know if you have children of your own, but
I don't. I have a stepdaughter, but I don't have any children of my own.
They're demon seeds, by the way, and they will suck the life out of you. But I love them to death. And my 2-year-old, I love my 20-year-old. He's doing great, and he's self-sufficient, and he's awesome. But my 2-year-old is the apple of my eye, and and I can look at him and he'll just start crying, or I can look at him and he'll just start laughing. He knows. I mean, we are bonded so close, and it's always daddy mode. In fact, the wife is fighting to keep him out of here because he keeps wanting to come in, and
I hear him occasionally.
Yeah, she's trying to keep him entertained. So bless her soul. So yeah, I've been a Saints fan as far as I can remember, from the horrible days of Archie Manning, up to the glory days of Drew Brees. I've followed the Saints incessantly. I'm a huge fan. I watch the drafts. I don't do fantasy football. I can't.
I don't either.
Can't wrap my head around it. I don't get it. I don't want to get it. I enjoy football. I'm sad when it's over. And all my gamer friends, I don't think I have one gamer friend that's a football fan. I think they're all like, "Oh, that's stupid. That's a waste of time." And I'm like, but there's different forms of entertainment, and whatever brings you joy, that's what you should do.
I think what has been remarkable in our lifetime is the way we've seen gaming. And I give Game of Thrones a lot of credit. I give Lord of the Rings a lot of credit. I give Star Wars a lot of credit. Has the sort of geeky pursuit of that has really mainstreamed in a lot of ways. Yeah. And I think Critical Role has played a huge part. I was at a small comic book convention here in Ithaca, and all these 20-somethings were walking past my table and going, "Oh wow, look at that fantasy art. That's just like Critical Role." And I must have heard that about 10 times.
Wow.
And I'm talking about 600 people show up to this thing. It's teeny. I mean, I do it because I love the people who put it on, and it's a lot of fun, and it's in my backyard, and I can literally roll out of bed, throw my artwork in the car, and get there, and there's no fuss about it. I agonize about conventions. I hate doing conventions. Once I'm there, I'm fine. I love doing it. I love.
Yeah, but you get sick after every one. I mean, I just went to Austicon 2 weeks ago, and I'm sick right now, and hopefully it's not. I don't think it's coming through in my voice, but my throat is killing me. That's why I keep sipping water.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. It is what it is, man. It's I'm fortunate. I'm like you. I'm in great shape for the most part. I've been losing weight. I had 3 heart attacks in my 40s.
Oh no.
Yeah. I was going through a horrible divorce. I was 300 pounds. I had a horrible job. It was just the stress. And then I woke up in the hospital. They were about to split my chest open, and they got a pulse again. So it was a miracle, if you believe in that sort of thing. I'm not a religious person, but whatever it is, the fates decided that they didn't need to open me up. And I just remember my doctor sitting on the side of my bed the next day. My son at the time was about 8 years old, 8 or 9, and he's there upset, of course. And my ex-wife is outside going, "I told you," she's being ugly. But at least she brought my son to see me, which meant a lot. And I remember the doctor, he looked me right in the eyes. He said, "John, you got 2 choices, lose weight or die." And, of course, my son starts crying, screaming, "Don't die, Dad!" I'm like, great bedside manner there, Doc. But it was the kick in the pants I needed. And I had also met my wife, who was totally hot to me. She's a Southern girl from Louisiana, Sulphur, Louisiana. So she's a Southern belle. And she was gorgeous. And she was going through a horrible divorce. And so she was taking out all of her aggravation in the gym. And I was like, well, she likes hanging out with me. Nothing was going on at that time. We were just friends. And I was like, but she likes hanging out with me. And you mean to tell me if I go work out at the gym, she'll hang out with me? Oh, hell yeah, I'm going to the gym.
Yeah.
And so I had this smoking hot Southern girl, hanging out with me, going to dinner with me and stuff and hanging out. And it was great because she would text me when she was on dates. And all my friends are like, dude, if she's texting you while she's on a date, she's not on a date. She wants to hang out with you. I'm like, no, it's not like that. And they're like, right, and then,
So what was the catalyst that flipped it from friendship to a relationship?
We were in my apartment in Scottsdale, Arizona, and this is back in the days of people would download HBO shows, if you know what I mean. And my buddy had downloaded Blood and Sand, the
Rutger Hauer movie.
Yeah, Blood and Sand was the Gladiator on HBO.
Right.
Yeah, and it was, shall we say, it was very adult oriented. And my 8-year-old
Rutger Hauer Flesh and Iron. I can't
Flesh and Blood.
Flesh and Blood. Thank you. Yeah.
Which is a horrible movie, but it's Rutger Hauer, so we watched it anyway.
It's a horrible slice of humanity being horrible to each other.
Yes.
It's very much it feels like it should have been made in 73 as opposed to 92 or whenever it was made.
And now you've made me want to go watch it again because I think I have it somewhere. So it's a horrible movie. But we were sitting I had 2 couches in my living room in an L shape, and she was sitting on her couch, and I was sitting on my couch, and I was like, oh, you want to watch this show with me? And she's like, yeah, sure, I'll come over. And, I had my son with me. It was a Friday night, and we had a long day at work, and we went to the gym, and so we were going to watch this. I didn't know anything about it. HBO, I didn't have cable. I couldn't afford it. So I didn't know anything about it, so I hit play. And the first scene is a guy doing a chick doggy style right there, and I'm trying to, cover up my son's eyes. I'm trying to grab the remote, and my wife, who was my friend at the time, is like, oh my, and we kind of realized at that point that it was. Then that transitioned into True Blood after the kid went to sleep, and we were watching True Blood one night, and it was a big episode or something, and I just looked over and I said, I'd really like to kiss you. And she said, well, why don't you? And so I crawled off on my couch and I crawled over her and I kissed her. And I'm not joking, man. I can say this with pride. I saw stars. I saw fireworks. And we just kind of started seeing more and more of each other. And then finally one day she asked me to move in with her. We lived in the same apartment complex. And she's like, your lease is up before mine. Move in with me. We'll save money. Me and Jonathan, that was my son at the time, get along great. And, that caused a whole bag of worms with my ex-wife, of course. But we made it through, and we've been together for almost 9 years. We're on our 9th year right now. So
congratulations.
Thank you, man. That's awesome. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. This is my 3rd wife. I figure if this one doesn't work, I'll have to figure out where to bury the body. But other than that, it should be fine.
I'm on my 3rd wife, but she's also my 1st wife.
You remarried?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. I married my best friend. I mean, we have a lot in common, but yet we have a lot of stuff not in common. Like, I'm an 80s rock guy, and 80s new wave music and punk rock, and she's
Depeche Mode.
OMD. Yeah. Oh man, yes. You're talking my thing.
Spandau Ballet.
Oh, of course. And
English
she's
beat.
more of a Stone Sour and that stuff. And I like that stuff too, but I have XM satellite in my car, and it's usually set to the 80s rock station, the hair band, Guns N' Roses, and I'm a big Kiss fan. I went to one of my very first concert was Kiss up in upstate New York.
I shudder to think my very first big concert was Hall & Oates that my uncle took me to. And it was because he had an extra ticket.
I snuck out. I lied to my mom.
Okay.
I lied to my mom. My uncles were going, and they had an extra ticket. And I lied to my mom and said I was going to go over to my friend's house and study. And
Hey, my uncle was cool though, because I did get to see Prince 3 times and the Purple Rain tour, and got to see him in Madison Square Garden. So
yes,
thank you, Uncle John. You're awesome.
Yeah, I saw Prince, and now I live in the great state of Prince, or Minnesota.
It's a
I've been to Lake Minnetonka, and it's awesome. And they on Prince's birthday, I mean, they literally roll out the red carpets and everything. They still, even here in Duluth, I'm in Duluth, Minnesota. Everything's purple here. I mean, he's their state hero.
He's a remarkable dude.
Oh, he's an amazing artist.
Amazing guy. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of my strong influence on me as far as musical taste go.
So all the gamers are now slitting their wrists and swallowing their dice because we haven't talked about a game.
So all right. So let's. I don't want to.
We've gotten real personal here.
You get to dictate the time too. By the way, if you say you got to go, just say it. But
okay.
What's your favorite RPG?
My favorite RPG.
If you could sit down right now with all your friends and play something, whether you've played it or not, what's the one that intrigues you the most?
I think the one that I am the biggest fan of at the moment is Dungeon World.
I knew there was a reason I would like you. I'm a huge Dungeon World fan. It's up there on the
If you're going
shelf.
to sit me down with all friends, that's something I can play immediately. Within 15 minutes, we can be pulling dice and having fun. It's the easiest game I've ever GM'd.
Isn't it?
I mean, it does take a paradigm shift in thinking and putting a lot of weight on the players and taking a lot of weight off of but the fact that you don't have to roll dice as a GM, it gives me my mind time to be thinking of what would be cool in this situation while the players are handling all the mechanical stuff. Yep. It's awesome. I absolutely love it. But I also have to give a shout out to I was in a play test, and we're still play testing because it was so damn successful. Swords of the Serpentine.
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
It's coming out from Pelgrane Press, and it's a sword and sorcery game. And sword and sorcery is like the holy grail of role playing that I never ever quite found.
Gotcha.
I tried GURPS. I've tried some systems. I've tried a few, and it always came close. Yeah, exactly.
You name it, I probably have it.
But it never quite grabbed that feel that I wanted. That's somewhere between Elric and Conan,
right?
And with great Maelstrom Fafhrd in the middle, and Swords and the Serpentine, by God, did it. I know you said that you don't particularly care for published settings. Neither do I. I've always made up my own.
Right.
Well, not always, but I did Forgotten Realms, but it was because I took the map and threw away all the published stuff and said, this is happening here and this is happening there, and off I went. Swords and the Serpentine setting was so well done. Kevin Culp, who wrote it, and Emily, I'm blanking on her name, I apologize, blew my mind with how good their setting is. And I've been running it, we're going on probably 15 evenings now. And we were supposed to stop after 2.
Nice.
So I'm really enjoying Swords of the Serpentine. I can't wait for the book to come out. I think it's going to be later this year.
I'll definitely keep an eye on it. Definitely shoot me a link if you remember. No harm, no foul if you don't. But I review a lot of RPGs. So
Okay, I'm writing that down.
Oh, no worries. But I was just say, if you love Dungeon World, I'm gonna one up you, and okay. I'm gonna one up you with an ace, a spade trump, because I found a system and a setting that I actually love. Can you see it?
Yes, how do you pronounce that?
Symbaroum. It's from Free League Publishing.
Symbaroum. Is it a translation of a
It's a Swedish game. It's from the same guys that did Coriolis. If you've seen or heard of Coriolis.
Oh, okay, yep, I remember Coriolis. I never played it, but I remember it.
Yeah, this man, give this a read if you can. Pick up the PDF. GM doesn't roll dice. Players roll all the dice.
Nice.
And you focus on the story. And what's neat about this is, I grew up a Warhammer grognard. I grew up with Warhammer 1st and 2nd edition, and I loved Green Ronin's edition. So I like that grim, dark universe, but I also like, I like to know that there's some light at the end of the tunnel. And this setting, man, it's so evocative. elves, every fantasy setting I've seen, elves are always, they're pretty, they're graceful, they're better than you, so to speak. In this setting, elves are fucking evil. And they're based off of the seasons. So there's a summer elf, which is the youngest. They're very warlike, and they'll slit your throat as soon as look at you. There's fall elves, which are a little bit older, and they won't probably slit your throat right away, but they will still slit your throat. And then there's your winter elves, which are the ancients, and they're very wise, and they still don't like you because you're not an elf, but they'll tolerate you to an extent. And they do such a great job of just investing
making it Fey-like.
Yeah, and ogres are a player race.
And more like Paul Anderson's fairies from Broken Sword.
And goblins, ogres and goblins are a player character race. Oh, you locked up on me. We both locked up. Uh-oh. Did I lose you? Oh, there you go. You're back. I lost you for a second. I don't have audio. Your headphones died? I don't hear you. It's got to be on your end. Can you hear me? Nod your head. Yeah. Yeah, I can't hear you. Oh, I can hear and I can hear you. Yes. No, I can't hear you. Cranking my volume up, maybe. I didn't touch anything. I think your internet lagged out. Tell you what I can do is I can hang up and call you right back and see, maybe that'll reset the connection. Yes? Okay. I'm going to hang up. Guys that are listening, thank you so much. We're going to be right back. A little technical difficulty. Hello? Hello?
Hey, the character looks like this, and they hold up a page. I have no problem with that. That's why I post a lot of artwork, because I'm a gamer too.
Yeah. All right. Let me make sure the audio is working. Test, 1, 2, 3. Let's see.